Okay, everybody, welcome back to the conversation. As we said the other day, we're going to just be going live. We think it's easier to do it this way since we're sort of just trying to tell a bunch of stories at the same time. We get a piece in each day. This is my channel. I'm Steve R. Patterson, but a major part of it right now, at least right now, is the Gen X Transplant Bros series. That is myself and my brother Troy here. Troy, how you doing?
Fine.
Fine. Okay, each day.
Dandy.
You're going to work on this getting to a second word in your how you doing, but hey man,
Just
you summed it
fine
up.
and dandy.
Fine and dandy. There you go. Yeah, that's great. Well, Troy and I both were born in 1966. We are actually stepbrothers, but our parents married very young. I think probably around kindergarten. It seems like I've known Troy my whole life. We've lived together for the first part of it. Then I moved away. Then we got back together. We've moved back and forth. It's been a while since we actually seen each other, but oddly enough, we both ended up getting liver transplants in our 50s. And I got mine in 2019. Troy got his in 2022, was it? 3.
23.
2023, right. So that's how we are Gen X, being born in 1966, and transplant brothers, as I just said. So we've had a couple of lives already that have meandered all over the place. We've had some interesting medication updates, and there's been, for those who've been here, there's been a follow up on all that. Everything's fine with Troy. And so we also talked extensively about some of the drugs and medications. And so I won't recap all of that. You can see all that on our channel. Just go to the channel, go to lives to see the long form of those. You can go to the videos and see some cut ups from within them. Of course, we have a whole slew of shorts that have bits and pieces of all this. Today, what I think I'd like us to talk about is we've got a couple of loose ends here. I have a premiere going up at noon today. Right now, it's 11:21 on the 11:21 on. Actually, it's 11:21 and 11:21. I got kind of confused there for a second in 2025, but it did 40 minutes at noon. What I recorded earlier, which I thought I was going to be live, and that's why it starts out that way, but apparently it didn't stream. It just recorded it. So I put it for noon, but I'm going to do the second half of my transplant story, which part one and part two are up there. Troy's already had his part one, and then we had it together, sort of talking about after transplant, which Troy mostly shared his story. But since his has been 2 years and mine's already been 6, or however it's been now, mine's a little bit more. Plus, I had a little bit more of a complex issue going on at cancer and some other things. So I talk about that on there. But what we did also was we've caught everybody up on our rock and roll history, parts 1, 2, and 3, which led us up to the early heavy metal days. We talked about Iron Maiden and all that, and got us all the way up to 1985. But one thing that we didn't do is we have not talked about Troy and I ourselves as musicians, which began. When did that begin? Can we say roots?
Roots, 1977.
But talk about roots. What was roots like?
Roots was great.
Tell me about the equipment. Just talk about the musical equipment. Let's just talk about that.
The
What were we
equipment, the
jamming on?
guitars, our guitars were Wilson tennis rackets. And we also came up with the idea of having a 2x4 for the neck, and we cut out with cardboard shapes of guitars. And I cut out the shape of a Gibson Explorer and
Pathetic.
painted mine with models car spray paint. I just made a 66 Chevelle and I painted it this metallic green. So I painted my guitar metallic green. And I did that because I saw Rick Nielsen and I liked the shape of the Explorer. So we'd have cardboard cutout guitars with 2x4 necks for roots. And that was
And
kind of our introduction to music, writing our own songs at 11, 10, and 11 years old.
right. And we'll get our brother Greg on, who's resurfaced. He's a little older than us. He's not Gen X, but he's right there with us, just a little younger. He was part of this too. We were a trio. This is in the desert just south of Sarita, Arizona, about 30 miles north of the Mexican border back at this time. And where we just had the desert to play in. And Greg had a drum set. And see, all three of us, Troy and I ended up playing guitars, real guitars eventually. And Greg still to this day plays drum. We all do, but Greg sort of stayed with it much more professionally. And in those days, Greg's drum set was made out of everything you can imagine as far as what you could possibly pound from a bucket and everything. But the prized possession, as we talked about in the earlier, was the KFC bass drum, because it not only looked like a bass drum, but it allowed us to be able to write something on there like Kiss had and things like that. So we had roots on there.
Roots on one side and Kiss on the other. It was
Right. That was the other thing. Okay, side story. We also every once in a while we had the acrylic paints. We'd paint up like Kiss and go out there doing Kiss shows. That led to Roots, I think, or something along those lines.
We didn't have black, though, we had green.
Right. And then it had to peel off, and we had to do this after mom and dad left. We had to like really quickly do it. One time they came home and almost busted us. Remember? We were like, it's scrambling. They had to go someplace to be gone, and then they had forgotten something. Came right back, and we're
Well,
like
they
half
they I
makeup.
remember they went to play tennis, and then mom was asking, "Why is m why is the handle of my tennis racket white?" And it was
Clown
that
white.
clown white
Yep.
from painting up like this. I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, so anyway, that was when we were young. So in those days, I was living in Chicago. Troy and my dad and his wife, Troy's mom, and Greg had, and my younger sister Trish had moved to Arizona shortly after the time that I moved to Chicago. And so in the summertime, I'd come out Chicago, from Chicago to Arizona, and that's when all this took place. But within a couple of years after that, I don't even know really what it was. It might have only been like a year later. But you had moved to Mesa, and I came out to Mesa that summer, Mesa, Arizona, just outside of Tempe or out of Phoenix. And in those days, Mesa was a long way from Apache Junction. Today, it's just one continuous blob of city. But and we ended up getting guitars. And so, do you remember the name of the music store?
Milano's.
Milano's Music in Mesa. I don't even
Milano's
know if it's
music.
still there.
It is.
It
I
is,
was there.
okay.
Yep.
And that's where Greg got it. I remember there was that summer, Greg got a drum set, and you got your black, what kind of Westminster?
Westminster Les Paul. That was my second
Yeah.
guitar.
All right. And mine was a
Memphis.
Memphis Cherry
Memphis.
some it was not it was Tobacco Sunburst.
Yeah.
I had the Tobacco Sunburst Les Paul, and you had that one. And so I took the Les Paul. I never even played it with Troy. I actually got it on my way to the airport, and my dad flew me back. I went back to Chicago. So I was in Chicago with my guitar. You were out there. What did you start doing right off the bat? Did you lessons? Tell me about it.
Started doing lessons first with a guy named Larry. And Larry, my first lesson, there was a picture of he had the Guitar Player magazine. There's a picture of Ace Frehley on it. And he goes, "Is this why you're playing guitar?" And Kiss had come out with Dynasty. And I just completely abandoned Kiss that. Said, "No, I don't want to be anything like that guy." He goes, "Good, you're teachable."
That's
I want to
rough.
be, but I do want to be Joe
Ace, come
Perry. He
on.
goes,
So yeah, this is still the Joe Perry love affair days that really never went away. Like you said, you're still following
I
his Joe
still
Perry
love Joe
projects.
Perry's writing.
Right. And so you had the black Les Paul. What was your first amp?
Fender Champ, one like, I don't know, one 12-inch speaker, Fender Champ. And I don't
Fender
even know
Champ.
what ever happened to that thing.
I
I
don't know.
love that. It's a good setup.
There's one sitting right over there on that shelf.
You have a Fender Champ. Wow.
Well, we'll get back to this later, but when I sold all this, all the musical equipment when I left the United States, we got down here. One of the first things I did was go back and bring back the Strat. And so when I came back to Strat, I was like, well, now what? I'm not going to be lugging around a big amp. So I bought that little Champ. So, and plus I only do it. I can't play it out loud. I do it. But at any rate, so you had one of those. And what about pedals?
At a Ross Distortion,
Roth.
Morley Volume slash Wah
Mm,
Phaser. Yeah, remember the
Phaser.
Phaser?
You, you had to have that then because so many people still had the PV Classic. And the PV
The
Classic,
Classic came with a
right,
Phaser.
right. It like introduced phasers, for people
Yeah.
out there. It's like the old Alabama guitar sound.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays with that thing
A
all the
lot of
time. And plus,
disco.
right, plus they're like, I think, aren't they poster people? Or is that the thing for PV? Some of those bands that always had PV all over the stage. But,
Yeah.
right, and that's what I wanted to get was a PV Classic. And in my usual style, this was not my first amp. My first was some kind of goofy box thing made, I don't know, quasi drywall or something, had like a speaker in it. And it literally had an input jack and like volume and tone and a switch, and a red light and no effect. Oh, let me tell you the story. So I knew the sound of distortion, but I didn't really understand. I was in no position to go get anything. And plus, I'm not even sure I even knew pedals existed. But I had this amp and I had my guitar, and I was trying to, in the basement of my parents' house, they had some old speaker cabinets because this is the days when you had stereos and everything, with actual stereos with record players and things. And people had the big box speakers. And we had some old speakers down in the basement. It was like a cabinet that had like two 12s basically in it or something along those lines, and I decided, why don't I run these two wires from the back of this amp to that speaker and see if it's bigger? Because this speaker was like a little 8 or something. And in the process of doing that, I accidentally let the wires touch. And when the wires touched, I lost about 80% of the volume, but I got that distortion sound.
Right.
And I was like, what is this? So then what I decided to do was this is the beginning of me becoming a Frankenstein guitar person. We both are, by
Yep.
the way.
Yep.
But this led me to somehow using the input from another old stereo basically as a preamp or a power amp, I guess, at this point. Somehow I ran it through it to get more volume, or maybe I ran directly through. I forgot. I have forgotten. But but anyway, that was the case. But this did not last long. This sort of introduced me to it. And this is when I parlayed my first set of, I don't know, combination of chores and maybe actually doing 2 weeks worth of homework into going down to, I don't even know the name of the record music store. This is all in the city of Chicago. And I got my PV Classic, but not the one I wanted.
You
It was
had the
the
410,
I
right?
had the 410. I was like, what is
That's
this beast?
huge amp.
It was a monster amp. And I'm like, I don't even know what but looking back at it, I don't really know what my problem with that was, but it wasn't
I
the
don't
one that
either. I was
it was like,
jealous. It's like, holy crap, that thing's huge.
for some reasons, it wasn't the one that everybody else had, the regular 212.
212.
Right. I had 410s, 10 4 good, buddy. I was like, okay, what is it? I didn't think about it like then, but had I, it would have only made it worse. But so yeah, that was my setup. I had my Memphis Les Paul and then that. And I don't know if it had a gain to give you distortion, but it's about this time I started getting pedals. And I probably also started with the Ross, because I remember Ross was like the biggie. This is before Boss really became a thing. It was DOD was already around, and MXR pedals. Remember them?
I have a story I remember about that Memphis Les Paul that you have that I'd like to say. If you don't
Yeah,
remember, when you did bring it to Arizona and we saw it for the first time, I looked on the back and there's MEG had been scratched in the back of it. Do you remember that?
I do.
Right. So I said, "What's MEG?" And you said, "Well, that's my girlfriend Meg at the time thought it would be funny or thought it was true love or something. She scratched Meg in there." I said, "God," I said, "What'd you do?" And he said, "I dumped her." Good job. You don't remember
I
that?
don't even remember it being in the guitar, but it sounds logical.
That was the best dump
It's
I've ever
terrible though.
heard.
Hey man, priorities, come on, right? The guitar's gonna be here a lot longer, guaranteed. Okay, so anyway, yeah, that was my guitar. So you started building yours, and what kind of amp did you say you had at first?
I had a Fender Champ, then I
Oh,
had
the
a
Fender
PV
Champ.
Classic.
Then you got that probably only
Got the
rubs salt in the wound.
Classic, and then I got a Marshall head that I used the speakers to the Classic, and what you ended up blowing, not the speakers, but it just blew the crap out of the PV electronics.
Mhm.
I tried to use the PV amp without the Marshall, and everything was fried. The Marshall destroyed it somehow,
Yeah.
which I was fine with.
Yeah, so that I think you jumped quite a bit ahead of me by the time you got to that, because I went through a couple of different Frankenstein versions. I remember at one point I found in like a thrift store or something, or like maybe even a pawn shop in Chicago, not thrift, no such thing, at a pawn shop in Chicago. It was an old PA system, and do you remember seeing this? Did I bring this to Arizona? It was like one tall cat tower
Yeah, you
that had
did.
right, and it was like 410s in it, and there was two of them. It was two of these that had 410s, and it had just this old PA head from like, I don't know, the
Think
50s or something.
think we ended up using that for a PA for our singer for a little bit.
When we get Dan Pettit on, we'll have to have him. Dan would have been singing through that, right, in Enemy. But so I had that thing going, and that did nothing for sound processing. That was basically a massive bad power amp without a preamp. So that introduced me into this phase. I had that. And so what I did for my Marshall sound. And so by this time, as far as chasing a sound goes, at first I was just trying to get a distorted sound to sound like a guitar. And then eventually I got enough to where with the old PV and some pedals to do like the flirting with disaster. Da, da, da. So I had the successful, distortion sound and all that going. But what really put me over the top is when I had that PA, and then I went out and got when Marshall came out with a little tiny Marshall amp. Remember that thing? It had like one. It was like their version of a champ.
Like that?
And yes, kind of. Well, no, it was actually a little smaller than that. But what it had was a full size headphone jack. And when I
Yeah,
saw that, yeah, that too, right. When I saw that, I said, now there we go. I run that sucker into the input on the PA, and now I have a 410 cabinets with the additional like 75 watts from this thing. And so that became my first stage rig in Blitzkrieg, the band that Danny Schaefer, who will also be on, who is still, he's got albums out and everything now. Um, yeah, believe it or yeah, I mean, he just put one out recently. He's got like 5 or so. He still plays. He plays
that's
out all the
cool.
time. I see he's playing. He's constantly playing. But when Danny and I started Blitzkrieg, that's what I was playing, and that's what I played on stage for the Blitzkrieg performances, like the Rusty Nail and places like that in Chicago by like 83. Also, though, I had gone through 2 different guitar iterations at this point. After I had the Memphis, I got a Dean ML, and at that same music store where I'd gotten the PV amp. So I had the PV amp for a while and the Dean ML, and then I quickly after that went down to get and I ended up getting a Mexican Strat. I got,
I
my
think you had that white Strat when you were in Enemy with us.
right. That's what I'm saying. You missed the ML phase. That was still in
Yeah,
Chicago.
man, I wish you'd have had that thing. I love that thing.
Right. No, I got that. I just simply didn't like the way it played. And when I picked up the Strat, I was like, "Oh boy." And I've had Strats since, but except for the time when I played my Alembic, which I
Plus, it
would be
gave you the
playing.
Dave Murray
Well,
sound.
that's the thing. And so that's the last thing I wanted to say. So by the time I got to the when I got to Blitzkrieg, at Blitzkrieg, I was in sort of the phase at the very beginning of it of being, I'm searching for the Randy Rhoads sound. I mean, I was all the way Randy Rhoads. Over the Mountain, we opened with that song. I had to nail it. It was just me, it was just me, bass, drums, and Danny singing. And so I had all the guitar. And so that would be the opener. And so that set the stage for how I would have to sound. And so most of our stuff was original material, just like with Enemy, but in fact, one of the same songs. But when it came to the copies, the covers, it was a collection of Randy stuff, like the basic ones, Over the Mountain, I Don't Know, Flying
I
High
would love
Again.
to hear like the Blitzkrieg version of Funeral. I think that I'd
Oh,
love to heard that.
I could still play that if we want to.
I would
I
love to hear what lead you threw in there because I can
I remember
vaguely
yours.
remember any of it.
So he's talking about one of the songs that I brought over. But to finish up on this, and we'll switch back over there in a second. But I quickly then, because Randy was gone, Randy had just died, and so then by this time, Maiden was already firmly in me, and so Dave Murray became the sort of leading edge as a guitar player was still out there, and so my sound went to Dave Murray largely after that, as far as how I was doing my tones and so just imagine whatever if you can Google it, the pedal boards he would have had. I would have tried to mimic that to some degree with whatever scaled down price I could, and so that's that. And so the song he's talking about that I was playing with Blitzkrieg was Funeral, which to this day, I would say, if I had to, I mean, it's definitely one of the best heavy metal songs I've ever heard, bar none. And this has been going on a while, so I've heard a lot of heavy metal songs. But that song that you wrote, Funeral, that was an awesome song. And so I brought it to Chicago, and we played it in Blitzkrieg as our top, one of our probably our top cover song because it was 95% the way you did it. Obviously, you weren't there, so the parts that I did didn't make as much sense. So I had to blend them together since we only had one guitar player.
Did
So, what do you
I have
tell
a
me about
question?
Funeral?
That was a weird thing. I just
Can you hear the words? Church bell rings on a cold, dreary morning because the people
Wow.
are victim of plague. They didn't take heed to the words of which warning, so the death bell will toll every day.
Holy crap. That's black.
You feel ideal. They think they're gonna get me. Remember that part?
Yes, I do.
Exactly.
That was a good
Right.
part.
Man, to hear the way if you there is no recorded version of this song that we're aware of, but the way it opens and the drive of that, and then Dan whipping out the lyrics. I mean, but I'll tell you what, you want to hear that sung perfect. You hear Danny Schaefer play it in Blitzkrieg. Danny had that heavy metal highs, but he also has this raspy Danny voice. So, I mean, he growled his way through it. It was perfect.
How did the crowd react to that song?
The same way they did everything in those days. Heavy metal, all right, gotcha. It was still so kind of new, I mean, because
Right.
right,
What are they
because
doing?
Number of the Beast was, out, at the beginning of this. I mean, we weren't even up till, I mean, Maiden was still fairly young for most people, and so it was not like it would have been a few years later. I mean, people liked it, but it wasn't like what you would picture today as a heavy metal show with people moshing or jumping around or freaking out. It was largely people just looking around like, okay, this is cool,
Right.
not like it. And of course, if you would have seen Ozzy at that time, the audience would have been freaking out, but that's what you do at a concert anyway. But so so tell me on your end, do you remember writing Funeral or how that even came around?
I do remember writing it, and it just flowed. Just flowed. It was like one of those songs that just belted out. Like some songs you're like, "Well, that doesn't sound right," and you gotta go back and forth, "Well, let's put this there." But Funeral, I do remember just like, "This is it." And it was just to me, I mean, I hate to brag, but that was just amazing how it just came out, "This is it. This is what we're gonna do."
Yeah.
Mm, I mean,
5 8, remember the timing?
the timing changed a lot through it.
But it was I think, 5/7 and 5/8. I remember there was a thing of that going on, especially that middle part. That dun 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 dun
Yeah,
dun 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 dun.
I don't even know what timing that is.
And then right back into the grand and the guitar solo. Then it's like, I mean, the song is like Ride of the Valkyries, heavy metals versions with no reference to that song whatsoever. But the image it brings up in your head, I
Do
mean, it's
you
just
wanna
what?
know where I got the idea for the guitar solo of that song? This is crazy.
Here it comes, Donnie and Marie.
No, it was at I love the guitar solo in Chicago's 25 or 6 to 4, and I thought, "I wanna put that in a heavy metal song," so I
Trying to think
kinda
of
tried to emulate that guitar solo into a heavy metal song.
That's funny. I mean, I mentioned that song so often. No, well, not that one, but I mentioned Chicago because when I was a kid, in the building right below. This is when Chicago was still being
Good.
Chicago. But hearing the piano, that practiced all day, dun dun, Saturday in the Park or whatever it
Yeah,
is,
that's a great
and then
tune.
stop, and then practicing it again. A couple apartments down, members of the band apparently live there. That's been the story I've always heard. And we did have some other celebrities that lives right around us downtown in Lincoln Park, right across from the actual park. Go ahead. Sorry, that threw me. So I can't think of the guitar solo in
Well,
25 or 67.
there's a like a continuous wah up and down, wow, wow.
Yeah.
I wanted that, and I
Oh,
remember
yes.
yeah,
Because that
and
is how you sounded. That
yeah, and I was
wow.
trying to sound like that solo
Right. I
because
feel
I
like I
felt
should
like
get
nobody's gonna know
the guitar is
Chicago
right
being
here.
put into heavy metal music, and I
Right.
remember Kevin, our bass player's like, you know, he didn't like it, but Dan was like, "No, that sounds awesome." But then Dan thought I think he thought we should put a harmonica in it. I'm like, "No, no, no, no."
Man, that's how you get out of the band.
Yeah,
This is a long
that
time for
and
John
bring your
Popper.
girlfriend to practice.
Right. This isn't Muddy Waters, and this John Popper is probably, I don't know, learning how to play right now, harmonica. I don't know, that's probably not the case, but, you know what I mean? Harmonica really didn't enter the rock world much
No, just because
other than
Ozzy
Bob Dylan's
Osbourne did it
Neil, Ozzy did it?
in Black Sabbath, there's a beginning.
Okay, okay, there you go again, back to the early '70s.
Right, like,
So,
"Nope,
right,
not
when
in
Neil and
this
everybody else were doing
band."
it. Right, right. I woulda loved that. You know, speaking of what you're not supposed to do you recall there was a video of Bruce Dickinson right after he had joined the band? And I remember this to this day because I used to say it increasingly when other bands started to do it, but then it actually happened to the very band that said it. But there was a video of him right after he had joined Iron Maiden, and he was, like, in this nightclub or something. He's, like, sweaty and everything, and maybe he just come off a stage with Samson or whatever band or no, he was in Maiden, but the question was, "Why don't you have any keyboards in any of your songs?" And he said, I'm trying I don't his accent was much thicker then, but it was like, "You cannot play the heavy metal music with the keyboards. Keyboards do not belong in the heavy metal music." And I was like, "Thank you." You know, because 'cause I'm
Right.
thinking, remember on the back of the album, you said we are
No ulterior
Rivet Head,
motives.
Earth Dogs, right? All this stuff and all these things we were supposed to call ourselves, Rivet Head, Earth Dog, all the
Yep.
rest of it. And yeah, we don't need any keyboards. Just give us guitars, Marshall stacks, put them on the stage and go. Guitar players, go. And then
My
Somewhere in Time came out and it
yay.
opens with a keyboard.
The and Iron Maiden would always say, "No ulterior motives," which to me meant no keyboards. And for me, bands were destroyed by replacing the second guitar player with keyboards. The first guy that did it was one of my favorite guitar players, Rick Derringer. He
Mhm.
replaced his rhythm guitar player with a keyboard player, and he sucked. Thin
Yeah,
Lizzy added
right.
keyboards, and then Kiss, they had keyboards on their Unmasked album. Like, what
Mhm.
are you guys doing? Rush could get away with it, but I
Rush, that's their MO. Right. I mean, if you
right,
start that way, it's one thing. And
right, but
we're
man,
not trying to be
adding
too anti-keyboard here,
keyboards
but
still have no
we are.
place in heavy metal music, and
There you go.
Van Halen did not like to be labeled as heavy metal. So when they came out with their 1984 album, the song Jump had all those keyboards because they were like, we don't want to be heavy metal. We're just going to throw a ton of keyboards. And when they played Jump live, Eddie played keyboards and so did Michael Anthony. There was no bass and there was no guitar in Jump in 1984. And I thought, okay, here's a perfect example of what I don't want to do. I don't
Right.
care if everybody loves Van Halen. I'm
Mhm.
not doing that.
Right. Yeah, and this is when the viewers out there saying, "That's why you 2 stopped playing live in '85 and they became who they became."
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom!
Exactly.
Was it Burn, right? No, yeah. There was never any I don't we it was not in the cards. The structure around us was in no way conducive to that. We were I mean, the most sane even the craziest stories of band stories we have were really the most sane things we were doing at the time, comparatively speaking in other ways, and those other things took over, you know, but
Yeah.
and plus I was only with you during the summer times and all that, and then I went out and lived there for a while, then I ended up dropping out of high school or getting kicked out of Grossmont High School, or not Grossmont, Mountain View High School.
Mountain View.
You were in Grossmont another summer, we all lived in San Diego, El Cajon,
Oh, that was
but,
crazy.
right, I said we've been all over the place, but, so even the enemy phase for us was less than a year. And then Blitzkrieg for me was about 2 years. But then I ended up, Danny Schaefer ended up deciding he didn't want to play heavy metal anymore and became a Grateful Dead head.
Wise choice.
Yeah, wise choice, Danny. Look where he is. Remember, I've been saying that he has albums. Look at us, right? That's
He ought
very
to
good.
make a metal album just for shits and giggles.
We should get a mashup of all of us together and try to perform Blitz or funeral one day. That'd be great. I'll be there. I know how to play it. I'll teach it to the rest of you. I still play it quite often. But blah 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 blah. I forgot where I was in the whole story. Anyway, so Danny left, and then and then I was like, I'm not going to put another band together. We had put Enemy together, we put Blitzkrieg together,
Yep.
and there was some controversy about me and a bigger band in the city. that I'll have Danny tell that story. So I had an option briefly to go big, perhaps, but I didn't know it. And I ended up joining the military. And so that was the end of all of those days of playing with other people. Although I did have another band in the Army, and we'll have perhaps my friend Ed on to talk about that band, Fallen Angel. And that would be the last time that that Stratocaster that had the name Lucifer written on its name. I mean, come on, we were as metal as you get in those days. And it that was the last time it played out live. And then it was subsequently stolen in 1991.
You had that in Camp Verde. I think, yeah, the people you put it in storage and somebody stole it from your
Right.
storage, I think.
I put it in storage when I went on Grateful Dead tour in '91, yeah, and somebody stole it. When I came back, it was in Prescott Valley. When I came back, the lock was off the storage place and everything, all my military stuff, everything from up to that point in my life was gone except what I had in
Well,
the
I
truck.
think we know who stole it.
I think we probably do too. But at any rate, it's a long, long time ago now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So, at any rate, so that was an interesting conversation. We pretty much took us up to 85. So what happened with you and Enemy and you're playing after I left? So let's finish you up to that era.
You left and see, 80, yeah, 85, I think I disbanded it because I was sick of replacing people, just tired of it. And because then you have to, by the time you get another guitar player and he learns all the songs, your drummer quits. Now you've got to go back to rehearse, try out new people. Then the guitar player's like, I'm frustrated, and he'll quit. Now you got a guitar player and a drummer. You're trying to show songs that they've never heard, and you don't even have recordings of them for them to take home. And then it got to the point for me, I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm burned out. And we just left practice and never called each other. I was traveling down the road and at a red light, the bass player, I looked over at him. He was next to me and he had his bass and his amplifier in the back of his El Camino. And I said, Hey, Kevin. He goes, Hey. And he goes, I'm going to go try out for Dan's band. I said, All right, great. Dan's in a band? I didn't know. I think
Friend
he
of me.
thought I might have been mad or offended. I was happy. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm out of here. I
I'm
hope you
out of here.
guys do good with
Yeah, the whole
this.
thing had changed because by that time you started to see the eyeliner and the poofy hair and all that starting to come around more and
Yeah,
more too.
I was done with
It
it. And then
changed. Right. Yeah, it still had denim and leather, but the spikes were gone and because
yeah,
even with
they
me at
dressed in
Blitzkrieg.
colorful clothes and they looked like
Right.
transvestites and I like I'm not
Well, see,
this
I
isn't
didn't do
heavy
that.
metal.
Do you remember I bleached my hair white?
I do remember that. And then you
Right, I
bleached
did
or
that.
you dyed it pitch black too once.
Both. I went back. I did them both over the
I
Blitzkrieg
think
era.
you did wasn't there a character named Elric?
Yes, that's
That and that's
exactly
and
what
that
was
kinda
going
why
on.
you bleach blonde it or white?
Yes, yes,
That's what I
that's
thought.
also how my first son got his middle name,
Oh, that's right, right.
which happened just 2 years after this. But at any rate, yeah, Elric and Melonbone. But that was the white hair days of Blitzkrieg, and then I was like, okay, this is ridiculous because then Vince Neil had the white hair, and so I went black hair, and then after that, I had it shaved off. I went to the Fort Benning, Georgia. Here you go, Grunt, or there you went.
Did you
So
get
that
your
was it
hair
for.
cut before you went there?
Mm-mm,
No? Wow, they're like, "Okay, we got this going on."
that didn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Nope.
You could show. You could try and show up. In fact, I actually heard that if you show up looking like that, they can be a little harder on you because that's one less thing they can do to bust you down right off the bat. Because that's what it all is. I mean, it's cleanliness and uniform. Well, it's uniformity first off, but it's also to slowly degrade you because they need to break you down
Build you from the
completely.
ground up.
Exactly. And there's no effing around, so we need to start serious. So by the way, here you are, baldy. You're gonna look just like the rest of these morons, and then they start yelling at you. In those days, they could cuss at you too, scream and yell what they're gonna do to you and your mom and everybody else. It was a different army, but but I loved it. It was the most fun 3 years of my life, but a little over 3 years. Any rate, that should take us up to 85.
Okay.
We'll talk more. I'm gonna have some band stories at some point, but that was a great conversation. So, folks out there, if you are a person that lived through this era, garage band veteran like ourselves, that maybe had a chance to play out a few times, but never really hit the road or went on extended tours or anything like that, or if you did, you know, tell us what we did wrong. We should have got the keyboards. We should have let the girlfriends come
No.
to practice. We should have put on the eyeliner. But,
Yeah.
we should have done it, man. We should have sold our soul. But,
Yeah.
at any rate, so we didn't do that, and we lived just like we did through everything else. We're the Gen X transplant brothers. Troy, do you have anything else to say for this segment?
No, I do not.
All right. Well,
There's
anybody
3
have anything
words.
to add?
That's
You're
4
building on it.
words.
Right.
4
So
words.
if you enjoy this kind of content, let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all those kind of things. That really does help. The biggest thing it can help is if you're actually watching this, you've been watching it the whole time. Watch time is watch time. But we appreciate whatever you do. Like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to comment. And we will see you when we pick back up the conversation. Ciao, man. And now, for those that are watching the live feed, the way that we're doing this is we're immediately going to start another conversation right now because we're doing this all live and we're going to cut it up into
We're
different little
going
segments.
on.
We are going on, Troy. How do you like that? So those that are watching get to see this because this doesn't really pop up on the front page the same way because it's go live, doesn't stream naturally to the front page. So let's move on to another topic that I wanted to talk about today so we can get ourselves plenty of stuff out there for folks to listen to. I want to ask you some questions, and I would like you to ask me some random questions to get to know each other a little bit better. For starters, I really don't know the answer to these, and Troy and I have not seen each other as we've seen now for almost 20 years, and a lot has taken place, and vice versa. So, Troy, I want to ask you specifically about the railroad era because we've mentioned it before in the wrong ways because we were talking about when we were doing the wrong things leading up to transplant and getting sick, but in the good, regular, everyday railroad stories, what's like one of the like wildest, crazy stories, I don't yeah, how about that? What's one of the wildest stories you could tell us that you haven't told anybody else about your time at the railroad, like an experience that went down while you were on the job?
This this one I was just thinking about, when I worked in on the Montana, North Dakota border, and there was a junction called Snowden Junction. It's no town, it's just a railroad junction. And I'd pick up trains from Snowden and take them south to a town called Glendive, Montana. But you have to do a brake test on the train to make sure, well, you wanna know that it's gonna stop.
Yeah.
And a crazy thing, it was on an Indian reservation, and I was having a problem with my lantern. It was in the middle of the night, a short or something, you'd have to shake it, the light would come on, and I could hear Indian chanting, um, and I looked up on the Black Hills, and there was this, like, this is bizarre, man. I looked up on the hills, in the Badlands, and you could
Hmm.
see the reflection of, like, a fire on the side of this hill, and you could see the,
Yeah.
like, silhouettes of Indians dancing. I thought, "Well, there's something going on up there," and, I thought, "Man, that's weird." So I started doing my brake test. My, lantern goes out, and I hear something in the weeds. Like, "What what could this get any weirder?" Indian powwow going on in the middle of the night, probably 2 in the morning. Now there's something in the weeds, my lantern goes off, and I hear it hit the side of the train, and I shake my lantern, boom, it comes on, and right in my face is this buck, his head with this big rack, and
Man.
he was coming through the weeds, slammed into the side of the train. There's no
Oof.
moon, so it's pitch black out, and I was as scared as
Yeah.
it was. He had a big old rack. And then it made its way and it jumped through in between 2 railroad cars, it jumped through and kept going. So I finished my brake test, get on the train, and I'm telling, my engineer about everything that had happened. He's like, "Nah, no." And so I quit that railroad and went to a different one in Bismarck, and he called me up one night, he goes, "Remember when you were talking about that Indian powwow in the Badlands?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, I saw it. Said, "Well, you
That's
believe me
ins
now?" "Yep."
well, that's cool that you had a chance to see that though, because those folks up there, what commonly are called these days indigenous, but of course out west it's still common to hear Indian and Indians say Indian.
Well, Indians
Um,
don't even mind be called Indians.
exactly. So, and
It's
I don't think
white people
anybody's
that
going to get.
call them Native Americans.
Regardless, these individuals,
Indian
locals,
visuals.
the people in question, to be able to see them doing that, I mean, that's pretty special. I mean, they're doing that not performative. That's not for some tourist attraction or anything like that. That's real live spirituality in its purest
Yeah,
sense,
it
regardless of
was
whether, yeah,
really, really cool to
that's
see that
awesome.
happen.
Right. It is cool. And so as far as the buck, man, on top of that, he's probably kind of upset that he just bashed into a boxcar
Yeah,
and
he
now he's staring
bashed
at
in the
you.
side of the train, and I was wondering, first the Indians, now this deer. I'm like, is there some connection from
Yeah.
the
Right.
weird.
We could go there. I have to say though, when the lantern came on, did the buck stop moving?
It scared the buck.
But did it stop moving?
Yeah, it stopped and looked at me for like
So
a
like,
split
did it?
second, then kept like trying to find its way through the train, and
Okay,
like
so
it's
it didn't.
coming closer to me, and I'm backing up, and then it finds its way in between two rail cars, jumps and takes off.
Okay, I was testing the deer in the headlights thing.
Oh, it had
It
that. Yeah, it paused.
Yeah, okay, it had that. But then it's like, okay, pause, react, or
Yeah,
respond. This is
pause.
the
Gonna
pausing
kill
and
you now.
responding, right? Instead of the initial reaction. It's probably a smart thing. Maybe they have something we don't. Respond instead of react. Although in that way you might get yourself hit on the highway. But well, that's pretty interesting. What about like, okay, what railroads have you worked
Boy, that one was called Yellowstone Valley, which I think got consumed by the BNSF. We always called it Jellystone Valley because of Yogi Bear.
for? Mhm.
And we would talk to each other over the radio like that. Hey, boo boo, take 'em ahead, 5 cars.
Engineers, train crews.
We were goofy.
So that's one. How many did you say? So I know you worked for Illinois Central. You worked for whatever you were doing up along the Canadian border.
That
What was that one?
was that one was called Dakota, Missouri Valley, and Western. They were out of
Okay.
Bismarck. That was
And
I
then
worked
Arizona
out of
was
Crosby, North Dakota, way up there.
Crosby. These
Yeah,
are
that
little town
man,
and
that
you
was a
live in these towns? Did you live in
yeah,
these towns where you heard it?
yeah, I actually lived in my car in Crosby during, like, the worst winter they had in, like, 10 years, and my back window would not roll up all the way. So I was sleeping in it, and snow drifts would come on and poke your face like needles and
Why didn't you have
pins.
why did just didn't wanna rent for a short period of time?
Well, it was right when Wifey Poo kicked me out, and I had nowhere to go.
So you were in transition.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It
How long did you so then where did you go after that railroad?
that one I got fired from. I got fired from, like, 3 of them.
Okay.
Then I moved to I think I went to the Southwestern Railroad out of Carlsbad, New Mexico for about 3 months, which that's a really neat part of the country there. If you ever go to Carlsbad Caverns is
Yeah.
really cool. You ever
Why
been there?
why 3 months? I don't know. I don't
The
think no,
the
I haven't.
the cost of living there was
Too
so
high.
high that I couldn't afford an apartment there on what they were paying me
Mhm.
because there was an oil boom at that time, so all the whenever there's an oil boom, the everybody that owns apartments, the oil workers come in, they make $300,000 a minute, so they
Yeah.
skyrocket their, rent, to where it's just unaffordable if you don't work for the oil company.
Well,
So making, $30 an hour didn't pay crap when somebody's making $200 an hour, you know?
yeah.
So
You just
I'd
get
left
priced out of
there.
town. It's like corporate gentrification almost, or
It was horrible.
sector
It happened to me in
industry gentrification. Yeah, but it would happen anywhere. I mean, if you have a little town and all of a sudden they put in a chip factory, suddenly everybody's gonna have a little bit of
they
expertise in
they
that
did it
regard.
in Montana too, where your rent went from 600 a month to 2,200. They'd rent to you month to month in case the oil boom came. And it's the same oil region from Montana all the way down to New Mexico. All that's the same oil. And so, you're paying $600 and then you pay the $600 for the next month. She says, "Oh, by the way, next month is $2,200." What? I
Wow,
can't afford that. And she goes,
that
"Well, get
sucks.
out. Somebody else
That
can."
sucks.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
man, those
horrible.
people, yeah, those are people are scumbags. I mean, people would take
Scumbags.
advantage of people like that. That happens all the time down here where I'm at. What follows communities that are like expats and stuff is what's called gentrification. But the truth of the matter is, the people that here are not driving up the cost. It's the local people who raise their prices. That's the problem, not the fact that other people are there. In this instance, and in most instances, but that is egregious to month gouge people based on whoever the flavor of the month is of renter.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, have fun with that at the when you're standing at the pearly
Well, it
gates.
ought to be
But
illegal, but if you go month to month, they can do that.
yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh on it, but it just seems like I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't
I
do
would
something
never
like that.
do it to anybody.
No, 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 no. I mean, yeah, you can make a lot of money. You maybe do it a little bit less, but to have that draconian of a thing to be basically going. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I'm just going off what you said.
That is horrible.
Based on what you said, doesn't sound very good. Let me okay, I know there's some interesting ones in there, but I know there's some ones that I don't know, but I do know a couple, so I'm gonna ask you to tell them. I recall one time when you were in the North Dakota line, this is me pre-transplant when we'd talk on the phone. You were telling me about how it would get so snowy that the snow would be coming so hard and it's so just nothing around you that and once it got dark outside, if it was snowing, it was very difficult to actually see the train itself if you were off the train. And you had this situation one night where you had to get out of the engine and either walk back to the caboose or something like that. And things did not go well once you got out into the snow with you and your lantern.
Yeah, you couldn't see anything. And it was slick. You're walking on icy rocks along the side of the train and wading through some snow drifts that are literally up to your belly and fighting through that because there's a problem with the train because trains are air brakes and so air molecules shrink. So it takes forever to pump up to get your air brakes to work. And
And so
just
what you're out going down and doing that?
yeah, and trying to fix a train that the train busted in two. That's what happened.
So it came
Yeah,
apart.
man, that was horrible trying to fix that in the middle of a blizzard.
And there was other time though you told me that you basically got lost next to the train.
I think I was doing land surveying for a while.
Okay, so tell us about whatever happened. You in a blizzard and a lantern is what I remember.
The blizzard got lost next to the train.
Anyway, maybe I got it confused with another one, but sounds like even the night we were trying to connect the train together, that might be what I was thinking of.
Yeah, boy,
Because
that was
the
a
way you were talking about it, I recall the way that you talked about it. You were like, you felt like if you walked too far one direction, there's a chance you lose sight of the train, and then if you lost your bearing,
yeah,
you could be literally
yeah,
walking away from the train into like a field and not even know it. And since it were
yes, yeah,
And
it was
again, this
called
makes sense with your brakes thing because you couldn't hear the engine anymore. You were far
no,
enough you
couldn't
couldn't
hear it,
hear the
couldn't
train.
see it, and that you would come across that's what it was, you'd come across, a bridge where they didn't have walkways on the side of it, and there would be a stream still flowing under the bridge, so you'd have to walk along the stream to try and find a narrower place to cross the stream, then try and find your train after that. And with it being, it's called snowblind, a whiteout, where you're just like, now you're lost because I and you can't retrace your steps because they'd been snowed in. and you're listening, like you said, for the locomotive sounds, you can't hear that. All you can hear is the snow blowing, and being out there and lost like that is terrifying. Yes, it
I
was
can
scary.
imagine. Because you're also in North Dakota. It's not like you're gonna come up on a road or a gas station, and I'm not saying
Right.
all North Dakota, but where we're talking, you're way out there.
In middle of nowhere. I mean, there's no you can't get your bearing on anything because
Right. This is the
there's no
story.
trees in North Dakota. And here's a funny North Dakota story. People, this is a joke. I moved to North Dakota because I was told there's a good-looking woman behind every tree.
That's
Oh,
terrible.
yeah. Well, there's no trees.
I put it together based on the prior comment. Wow. Okay, good. There we go. Okay, how do you say it? North Dakota?
There's no TH in North.
It's North Dakota.
North
In North
Dakota.
Dakota, we're gonna have all the North Dakota women come out from behind the trees and probably comment on you now, Troy.
Yeah,
So you might have some
there's some
explaining to do.
good-looking women in North
Unless, of
Dakota.
course, we don't see any comments, which would suggest anyway.
Shut
So
up, Troy.
so would that be like the closest you think you came to dying out there?
Yeah, I was terrified.
Anytime
I was
did you
very
ever have
scared.
any like Casey Jones? Any Casey Jones moments of not the one part Grateful Dead part, but the part where you lose control of the train? Or the train seems like it's iffy?
Well, yeah, the especially when you first learn how to drive a train and you're out there, there's no guy training you on what you do if you make a mistake. It's all you now. And two
Mhm.
things happen. You control the train or the train controls you.
Alright.
Yeah, and when you lose your pressure, when you've used too much of your brakes, you kick your brakes off. You've got to build air pressure back to get to use your brakes again. And so you're undulating up and down mountains in the west, and you're looking at your gauges, and I got to slow down up here in about 4 miles, but I don't have enough pressure to slow down yet. And you're just like, so there's all kinds of things you can do. But I remember being scared that I wouldn't be able to stop. But I mean, I always did. But it's terrifying when your first few solo trips
Mhm.
driving a train. For me, it was
Especially, like, out west. Did you ever do
out
any of those,
west
like, come
where there's
down those long
mountains.
grades?
Yeah, long grades, always mountains, but, like, people here in the Midwest where I live now, it's flat. They don't know what it's really I shouldn't say that. It's a lot
Yeah. Well,
different to drive a
obviously, they
train
don't
out west.
experience. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I mean, it's not
right,
like you're
they don't
saying it's
experience,
better or anything. It's just
the
yeah,
mountainous the mount
exactly.
when you come to the Midwest where it's all flat, you're just like, "Gosh, this is easy."
Yeah. Just a lot more towns to avoid people.
Boy, yeah, that's another story. The towns in the Midwest, you got a town like every 7 miles and usually 3 or 4 crossings. And out
Yeah.
west, you could go 300 miles and probably 12 crossings.
Tell me about some crossings. Do you have any hairy moments at crossings?
Oh, yeah, I've run over people with trains before at crossings. That's
Tell
kinda
me
why I moved from the Midwest to go out west was because I 96, 97 had a lot of incidents where I was just like, "I wanna go where there are no railroad crossings."
so what happened?
Arizona.
Tell us what was the first one?
My first incident was Salt Lake City. A woman, there's nobody in it, but she'd parked too close to the tracks and bam, we hit her car and it went spinning out into a highway and then it got hit by cars that were on the highway. I shouldn't laugh, but it was actually
Anybody
kind of
hurt?
fun. No, nobody was hurt,
Okay.
which was a good thing.
Okay.
That's why I laugh.
Right. Okay. So what about the next one?
The next one that was horrible. That was 2 people that I'd run over.
What happened there?
It was July 5th or 6th. It was like a long weekend, and, they were drunk. They were drinking Meisterbrow, I do remember that. Oh, man, it's such
Meister.
a weird story. The crazy thing is I was talking to the guy I was with. We were about done for the day, and, he goes, "You ever hit anything?" I was like, I don't like to talk about that at work because you kinda jinx yourself, but I thought, we're about done." And I talked about hitting a semi truck in that car. I'd hit a semi truck before this, and,
Mhm.
I said, "I hope I never hit pedestrians or people out on the tracks. I'll just freak out if that happens." He goes, "Yeah, that would be bad." And no longer had I said that, I looked out and there's 2 people walking down the middle of the tracks. It's like, "Holy crap."
On the tracks? On the
Right
tracks?
down the middle of the tracks, yeah.
Boy.
And so, hit the horn, the engineer I was a conductor, he does conductor doesn't drive, the engineer does. And so, hit the horn, they stopped, turned around, acknowledged we were coming. They turned back around and kept going, and I'm like,
They know you were moving?
"Yeah," and I looked down because I thought, I do not wanna see this." I just looked down, and he says, "Where'd those people go?" And I looked up, and I didn't see see 'em. I thought, "Oh, they must have moved," and I heard this thump, and I looked out my window, and one of the bodies was just out into the weeds. We just hit them. So we stopped the train. This is even crazier, man. This is a crazy story. Stop the train, go back. I watched the guy take his last breath, but it happened next to a boat club. Like I said, it was 4th of July weekend, and there were a bunch of kids out playing kickball and volleyball and stuff, and they saw it happen. So these kids run screaming into this boat club. The parents come running out, and I'm in shock. I can't believe it just happened. And they're like, the father's like, "What's going on here?" I said, Just go away, go away." Got it under control. And our dispatchers calling the police and fire and ambulance. They show up. I go back to find these bodies, which is something I'd never, ever want to see again. But so it all gets under control. Do remember the Meisterbrow because he had a 12 pack and still had 3 in the box. And I
Boy.
grabbed the Meisterbrow and I just started drinking his beer. And I was going through his belongings. I watched him take his last breath because I had to know who he was. And I'm going
Huh.
through his pants, getting his ID and stuff. I remember his name was John and her name was Betty. I do remember that. And we get going. We stay in the hotel that afternoon and we're both in shock about what had happened. I'm like, well, I want to get drunk. So we go down to the bar of this hotel, and people start showing up for the evening. And this conversation happens amongst all these people that are showing up. "Hey, did you hear about John and Betty?" I'm like, "Really? They got killed by a train just now." And I look over at my engineer like, "Should we get package? Should we leave?"
What happens right after you what do railroad investigators show up right off the bat?
Yeah, we call management
I
comes
mean, the
up.
train's not moving.
No,
The train still has not moved. What is happening next?
well, I go back to find the bodies, gets my ID, then the police eventually showed up, and I show them where they're at, and they had body bags and wanted me to help with the bodies, and I'm like, No, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. If you want them, you're gonna have to do that, or they can rot and let the, buzzards pick at them because I'm not helping with that." And I didn't. I tried at first, throwing up, and it was, man, it was horrible. And so they dealt with that, and we got the train going. Police, the Burlington Northern Railroad was who the railroad was at that time. The legal team, I mean, in fear of lawsuits, the legal team's calling me up saying, "What happened?" And I mean, they had it all figured out. In case of a lawsuit, the Burlington Northern Railroad had the lawsuit already over within an hour of that happening.
And so
Those people
were they calling you before this train even moves? Are we still train not moving?
No, no, no,
So
this is
basically,
like the
so you're basically saying this happens, there's no ambulance or anything. The police put them in body bags ask you to help. That's not something you're prepared to do, and then they leave, and you guys get on the train and go?
Yeah, we left before the police and ambulance and fire were still there cleaning up the mess because they really couldn't get to anything. They had to go down the tracks. The train was in the way. They wanted us to leave so they could bring all their
Yeah.
equipment down the tracks. And so,
Well, so then you went to the next town,
sorry, man.
parked.
What? Yeah, we
You went to the yeah.
went to the bar. We parked the train. The next crew got on it and they took it. It was a coal train, an empty coal train. I remember that. It was heading to Wyoming to get loaded from the Powder River Basin coal.
Yeah, I remember you telling me a story about 2 people on a track, and was there another time there was people on the track?
There were many.
Or
So I transferred out to Winslow, Arizona because of that.
right.
And I didn't wanna go through that ever again. And from Winslow, Arizona, is going east to Belen, New Mexico, just west of Gallup, New Mexico, coming around the curve, and there's a silver and black Chevy pickup parked right on the tracks. And we stopped the train before we hit the tracks. And this is a month or maybe 3 months after this had happened. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Enough of this shit.
Right.
There's 12 crossings and this is gonna happen to me now? So we stopped and then we didn't hit the truck, which I'm glad. But out of the desert came this Native American Indian woman with her hands waving. She's like, "Oh, that's my truck. That's my truck." And I get the license plate number, and she gets in it and drives to the res north, Navajo Nation. And I called dispatcher, and the first thing he asked was, "Which way did she go?" And I said, "North." And he goes, "To the reservation." I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, we can't do anything about that." And that's when I
Right.
learned that legal
Jurisdiction.
matters on the reservation were done by the FBI. So they had to
Uh,
call the FBI about this stupid shit. This is funny. We talk about Iron Maiden. When she'd gotten her truck and left, the song Run to the Hills
you came up
actually that came to
perfect.
my mind. I was like,
Yeah. Well, that's, any other exciting stories from the railroad? What did you learn from the railroad that you wouldn't learn from anything else?
how to drive trains.
No shocker. Anything
Yeah.
deeper than that?
Well, no, I think you learn how to manage people. I think you learn a lot about unions and how they work, and you learn about the politics of union agreements and company. You learn that as a union member, the companies do not like unions. That shouldn't be any news to anyone. And I
Right.
was told the reason why they don't like you, it's not personally. They don't like you personally. It's what you are a member of. You're a chunk of this entity that they hate. And literally, you go by your name, but on paper, I'm 746420-9
Right.
to the railroad. That's my employee number. I still
Right.
remember that. And I've remembered a couple other ones. But I remember the union telling me that's who you are when they ask who you are. Tell them 20-9. And that's all they really wanna know, and they look it up, and they're like and they won't even ask you what your name is, they're just like, "Okay."
Right. Right.
And other railroaders might have a different story and think that it's more personal. They're not that way. They're not. They're completely that way. I'm not being negative or anything, but when you're a union member, they don't really care for you much.
Right. I can
And I'm
see
sure
why. I
steel
mean, from their
workers and
point of view,
miners
right.
have the same story, you know?
I think all union people do.
Oh, yeah.
I've never been in it. I've never been in any way associated with the union, so I don't know anything about all that,
I thought,
but I know.
wasn't that company you work for in New Jersey, Varn, were they union?
No. I
Okay,
only worked there. I mean, that hardly even counts as working there.
okay.
It was such a short-lived thing. Yeah, that was a short little thing patch between the time I got out of the service and the time that we'll talk about next time, which is when we pick up in 1990 with our story as far as when we got back together. We talked in another segment about our music up until 85, but we're trying to piece in the 85 to 90 type stuff, and that's so this was happening basically during those days, or more or less, or actually no, it wasn't happening yet. So your railroad, let's do this real fast now. We didn't patch that up. We had the railroad, but the railroad doesn't start until when?
92,
Right. So what after I left, what were you doing during the late 80s in Arizona?
late 80s, construction work, pipelines,
Okay.
utility. Well, you worked there for a little bit, and land surveying.
In
And
90. Right. In
yeah,
90.
90. Then
Right.
yeah, that
We're talking up till that.
yeah, mostly land surveying, construction,
Mhm.
computer. Well, drafting. Right when computers came out, I started
Like
learning computer.
AutoCAD. I remember AutoCAD was big.
Yeah,
Right.
and that just
Running the transit.
yeah, land surveying. That was great. The
Right.
Well, you'd have laser beams and prisms, so it'd shoot a laser to this prism and send you back the message that what the angle and the distance, well, mostly distance was, and you
Mhm.
had to go out and get all of your long shots out in Arizona before the heat wave, because the heat wave would eat up the laser.
Yes, I remember that.
Remember that? So you're, like,
Yeah,
in a hurry to get all your
I
long
remember that.
distance done early in the
Right,
morning.
right. Yeah, I remember when I did we won't don't get too far ahead, but I never got that far. I was still a plumb bob holder.
Yeah,
Over
yeah,
to the left, over
yeah,
to the right.
right.
But,
I remember having to take the
but
Yeah, that surveying was really cool back in those days. I miss that, but now it's just
it
one
was.
guy with a
That was
GP.
fun. This is like right, it was like, "You go over there and we'll meet in 20 minutes when you get done walking through all the cactus and
Right.
everything else, pinyon,
Yeah,
junipers."
you couldn't do a straight
So,
line, so what you think when you're going up this
no.
hill, "That'll just take me 3 minutes," and it takes you an hour
Yeah, right.
because you gotta go back
Exactly.
and forth, go around the mountain to climb
Exactly.
up the back.
Right. It's like flying from where I'm at to Bogota. It's only like a 35-minute flight, but it's like a 9-hour drive because you have to go over the Andes to get there. So
Holy
for us, it's
cow.
just right over a mountain, but if you're driving, it's a long way. It's like all the way up. Well, first you have to go like north and then over the mountain and back down and crazy.
What about helicopters? You
So
ever take a helicopter ride there in Colombia?
I wouldn't get in a helicopter. I'm nervous enough when it says Avianca. All right. I'm kidding about the Avianca. Avianca's fine. My favorite airline is the uh the Mexican. I think it's Mexican. What are they called? I forgot. But I took them one time from Pereira straight to Chicago, and it was I'll remember it here in a second. It was the first time since like the 80s or whatever they had an actual breakfast. Like it seemed like they cooked it there. It was. I mean, it came in a plate, not in a shrink wrap thing, and it had everything. It was like a full freaking breakfast with coffee and juice, and they had little cups. I mean, it was just like flying to Florida or something back in 1980 when they used to give you, full meals and all that stuff and all the drinks and everything for free. They just handed it all to you. I mean, it was a completely different experience, and that was just like 3 years ago. What's the name of that airline? But anyway, I'll have to remember for next time. No, I've not been on a helicopter in Colombia. Although I do see Hueys fly over, or in Blackhawks flyovers. Not Hueys, Blackhawks fly over from time to time.
Military, I
Any
guess.
other questions about Colombia?
Mm.
Nope.
No, not
What are
right
you thinking?
now. I'm sure I have a
Rare moment,
lot
folks.
of them.
Okay, well, next time we'll do that. Okay, we should be done
Yeah,
for today. This has been a long one. It's been an
yeah.
hour and 14 minutes for those that are stuck around for all this. Most of the folks out there that come to see our channel, all 35 of you, will probably not see this until it gets cut up into shorts and smaller videos. But for those that are watching or those that do find the live, here it all is in one place so you can see it in context how it happens. And if you watch the 3 lives, it's a long time, but it has pretty much a running conversation going. And we'll pick it up from here, Troy. And we're going to divide these into playlists like music ones, transplant ones, things like that, start to have some kind of cohesive thing if anybody out there wants to see from the beginning, these conversations. What we're doing right now is we're just running through everything, then we'll go back and fill it all in. And we're also going to bring in all these people that we're talking about, from everything from the military to bands to I didn't even know what other categories, but they're there. That's largely the two music folks. Oh, expats probably at some point. Being that I'm an expat, I'm going to talk more about that. I'd like to talk more about my time in Mexico. I have not mentioned that at all, really, here.
No,
And so, with that out of the way, Troy, anything else to say to our gathered family and friends here?
I got nothing. I'm emptied now.
You're empty.
I'm
Okay.
emptied out.
And just remember, people, when you hear our stories, they go from being crazy stories of us going nuts and stories that have adventure and all that. These things don't always overlap. So just don't think that in every instance that certain things are also happening. The majority of the time that the serious things are going on, we are being just as coherent as everybody else. The times that we talk about when we're partying, going to concerts, having crazy times, we let it known at that time that we're talking about just that. So it's not like even today with the railroad stories that Troy's talking about, anything like if you hear other stories, we talk about how we developed what could be called alcoholism the way that we did in the time that we had that. That was not on the job per se. It was with me, but I was at home. Not the same with Troy. Troy was out in the world doing things. You can't be in the hot sun in Arizona drinking at 8 in the morning.
No,
You're not going to make it till 9.
dehydration.
You're going to be dehydrated.
Why
Yeah,
am I
exactly. I
sweating
mean, you got
so
to really
much?
watch that. Right. And exactly. And it's not like with the railroad, they don't test them. And I mean, they would have been all over those kind of things. So those things don't overlap either. And so I just wanted to clear that up out there for those watching that, yeah, we have some times when we sound just completely unhinged, but we also have some serious parts of our lives that we've taken very seriously here. But I think that's probably the case with most of you all, if you think about it. You got some buzzing going on there, Troy. You've already said your goodbye. I'm going to say
Yeah.
goodbye for us for the weekend. We probably will not do another live until maybe Monday. Who knows? Maybe we'll do one over the weekend, but we'll try to do one of these at least 3 of the 5 days a week. And we'll have stuff, otherwise, content up. Check the posts on the front page if you want to find out more about some of these things. I've posted links to my books. I've posted links to other things up there that we talk about that we haven't directly addressed. So until next time, stay in touch, reach out, comment. Talk to you next time, man.
Bye.
This is the part where I'm supposed to keep my eyes on the camera while also doing this and hitting stop. This is like at the end of one of those Marvel movies. If you stick around long enough, you get to see that.